This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 29, New York Comic Con 2015, that includes Jessica Jones and Daredevil Season 2. Welcome back to Defenders TV Podcast, episode 29, where we are covering everything to do with Marvel at New York Comic Con 2015. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Derek. Yeah, really delighted for this trip to New York Comic Con. Gave us so much more Marvel coverage than we were expecting.
Big time.
Yeah.
Stuff we can't say too much about because there is an embargo, in particular, the full episode of Jessica Jones episode 1 that is going to air this November, all 13 episodes on Netflix. It was such a surprise. We thought we were going to get little snippets, but we got the full episode, and it really, really, really good.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a bit. We're definitely not going to go into spoilers for it because we know how few people have actually seen the episode in all its glory at New York Comic Con. But we will go into our thoughts about it overall.
And we were told not to by Jeff Loeb.
Absolutely.
You know? He's quite clear that one of the reasons why we get to see this, the people that are at New York Comic Con and who are in the panel, the reason we get to see it is because we keep stum about the detail, that we can tweet, we can say how awesome it is or not, whatever your thoughts are. Mm-hmm. And you can do broad brushstrokes, but don't give anything away about the plot, any of the twists or anything else, because that's why they allow people in these panels who have queued up or have bought the tickets for New York Comic Con to see them. And same, I presume, with San Diego and any of the other great Comic Cons out there. So we have strict instructions from Jeff Loeb himself.
Yes, who is basically the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I give him a lot of respect. There were many guys walking around in black suits looking to take away people's phones and throw them out if they were recording footage from the panels and from the discussions that were going on, and obviously of the pilot of Jessica Jones. So we're delighted to have seen it, definitely, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go. So before we get into our coverage of Marvel's panels at New York Comic Con, we do have a competition starting on this episode of Defenders TV Podcast. Very simple competition. All you got to do is provide us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or any other good podcast catcher that has a review function. If you can't review us, pop us in an email to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Let us know your thoughts on any of the shows we've covered or any of the future shows. We'll put you into the hat for some great prizes. What did we pick up when we were at New York Comic Con, John?
We got the Jessica Jones and Daredevil posters, along with a double Agent S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter poster as well. Yep. Plus, we also picked up a tie-in comic of Jessica Jones. It ties in with the series being released in November, and it's done by the same people that wrote and drew Alias. That's Brian Michael Bendis as writer and Michael Gaydos as the artist. So that's a really nice little introduction for these characters. And the competition will run through to the release of Jessica Jones on Netflix and the start of our podcast reviews and chats and discussions about these episodes. So please send in your reviews on iTunes and any other good podcast catchers, and reviews to us through feedback at defenderstvpodcast.com.
But let's start off firstly with a little bit of an overall impression of New York Comic Con this year. This is our second year attending New York Comic Con. Last year we covered it on our sister podcast, Gotham TV Podcast, where we cover the TV show Gotham and all the DC coverage at New York Comic Con last year. And this year on Gotham TV Podcast, we got to sit down with the cast of Gotham again for the second year in a row. John got to interview many of the cast over there. So if you want to hear those interviews and you follow Gotham, make sure you go to gothamtvpodcast.com/iTunes to get that most recent episode, or you can search us in any good podcast catcher for Gotham TV Podcast, and you can get those interviews and our thoughts on all the DC coverage that were over there. But overall, for New York Comic Con this year, John, what did you think of this year's lineup?
I think from a Marvel perspective, it was absolutely amazing.
Absolutely.
In particular, the Marvel Netflix Jessica Jones and Daredevil panels. Mm-hmm. they were really good. They had the cast there. They had a full panel of cast and creators there, so that was really good. Obviously, the Agent Shields and Agent Carter elements, they did what they did last year, where it was a double act of Jeff Loeb and Agent Coulson.
Fantastic.
Really good still, but you don't get the panel element. You're really being treated to a sizzle reel of Agent Carter, and again, a full episode of the latest one that's currently about to, or has aired at this stage in the US, was shown. And that's really, really cool as well. But with the Jessica Jones Daredevil, we got the panel. It was great to hear from Kristen Ritter, and it was great to hear from Charlie Cox as well.
Yeah, but let's bring it back to the other show that we covered on Defenders TV podcast, Agent Carter. I'm sure people are really interested in hearing what we saw over there. So we got a quick intro from Agent Carter herself, Hayley Atwell, joined by
James Darcy.
James Darcy, yes.
They were in LA, obviously. And again, they were saying how Howard Stark will not be returning this season 2. Or is he? Because in true Hayley Atwell comedy form, it was all done on green screen, which you just didn't get whilst you were at the panel. And they both walk into the screen, and there you have Howard Stark, obviously played by Dominic Cooper, sweeping the floor of the set. It's obviously all indoors. It's not outside at all, like you're led to believe whilst Hayley and James are saying hi. We hope you enjoy season 2. They're currently filming in LA. So a really, really, really good fun little thing, which
absolutely,
again, with the whole dub smash going on at the moment, is true to form and absolutely great. And then we were introduced to a nice little sizzle reel for season 2.
Yeah, it was a clip of James Darcy and Hayley Atwell, basically trying to decide which car they would take of Howard Stark's. Fun little scene actually, where we were shown all the gadgets that Howard Stark has in his car, and unlike James Bond, these were all gadgets for
seduction.
Seducing members of the opposite sex by the look of it. A lot of good fun, little bits and pieces here. Definitely a good comedy between the two of them. They're definitely our favourite characters from the first season of the show.
Definitely. Really good to see. And we're also treated to a list of the new cast and the cast who are coming back from season 1. In particular, despite the prank by Hayley Atwell, we will have Dominic Cooper returning to season 2 as Howard Stark. We were delighted to hear that Bridget Regan, who played one of our favourites from season 1, Dottie Underwood, the Russian assassin, that she will be returning. She is certainly hot on the heels of Peggy Carter in season 2.
Yeah, and we heard that Chad Michael Murray is returning, this time as Captain. And we will also see Enver Jokaj returning, both from season 1 of Agent Carter, and both in captain positions, which is quite interesting. So both got a promotion out of the defense of New York in season 1.
Yeah, maybe East Coast, West Coast captains here. So maybe a bit of going back to New York, even though season 2 is primarily set in Hollywood. And then in terms of the new cast, one of the big standouts for me was that we will be seeing Mrs. Anna Jarvis. We had discussed how it was great not to see her and to have her off screen and referred to by Edwin. But, of course, we are delighted to hear that Lottie Verbeek is going to be playing Mrs. Anna Jarvis.
It's quite cool. I think I'd even said in season 1, I was wondering whether Bridget Regan could possibly be Anna Jarvis, that was the reason she was being kept aside, and that Jarvis had never actually met her during season 1, so potentially that she was going to be playing his wife, and that could be the big twist for season 2, but looks like that's not correct.
That's not the case, no.
Alright, just as usual, my speculation is a little bit off.
But we have 3 other new characters coming in for season 2. We have Reggie Austin, who will be playing Jason Wilkes. We have Curry Graham, who will be playing Calvin Chadwick. And then finally, we have Wynne Everett, who will be playing Whitney Frost.
That's right. Madame Mask, the big villain for season 2, along with Bridget Regan, is coming to join the show. So really interesting.
Yeah, Can't wait for season 2, which will be next year, 2016. No date yet confirmed.
Yeah. Not a huge amount from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. other than the actual episode, as we said. One thing I will say, if anybody has the opportunity to go to a convention like this where they show an episode for the first time, go see a Marvel one. The reactions of the audience to a Marvel episode like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a show that's been going on 3 years now and has some of the most ardent fans in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, really. Watching them and their reaction to some of the characters like Fitz and Simmons, who both appeared in this episode. Huge reactions from the crowd. Big ahs and big oohs, and really enjoyable to watch with a big crowd.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And we were basically treated to episode 3, where we see the return of one of the big characters to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe.
Yeah. Hilarious episode as well. Some really good fun in there. It's really good action. So, well worth checking out. I think that returns in the UK and Ireland at the end of October. So, hopefully we'll get to see that episode again in November. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Really good fun. So, after that, John, what was our next Marvel panel? We got to see the Lego Marvel Avengers panel on Saturday morning, which will be of interest. Honestly, I promise, for those of you that are gamers, and those of you that are Agent Carter fans, because it was confirmed in this panel by the guys from TT Games that not only is Lego Marvel Avengers covering the Marvel Avengers Assemble movie to Marvel's Avengers Age of Ultron, it's also covering some of the MCU movies in between, including some of the TV series in between. And we got to see a little Agent Carter level, which I thought was fantastic, with all the voice work provided by Hayley Atwell, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it's unlikely that we will see Daredevil there, because obviously one of the things that the developers from TT Games were saying is that, at the end of the day, Lego games, whilst they're enjoyed by adults as much as children, is also designed primarily as a sofa game where you can pass the controller around amongst family members. And obviously Daredevil, as it aired on Netflix, is a darker version, a much bloody version of these characters. So whilst we will still see Daredevil likely as a playable character, it won't necessarily, from what we gathered, be the Charlie Cox version of this character. But you never know. If it's taken out of context, as long as there's no particular storyline. As the guy from TT said himself, having a guy's head smashed to bits by a car door is not necessarily the way or direction that LEGO Games wants to take their franchise.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with the decision, I must admit. The one thing that would be terrible for the LEGO Games is to encourage a 6 or 7-year-old to turn on Netflix and start watching Daredevil thinking this is the character from the computer game they just played. It's not made for them. It would be a terrible way for them to have that character used. It should be encouraging them to watch the Marvel movies that are made for them, obviously, and hopefully read the comic books that have these characters. They definitely confirmed that Jessica Jones will appear in the game, Luke Cage will appear, Iron Fist, and hundreds of other characters that people have been requesting. So really excited for that one.
Yeah, and as Derek said, we will get treated to cutscenes from Captain America, the First Avenger, the Winter Soldier. There was Thor: Dark World will be included. Mm-hmm. Iron Man 3 will be included in it as well as Avengers Assemble and Avengers Age of Ultron, amongst others. And one of the other great things that we're going to get to see as well is mechanized Stan Lee. He will form his own mech suit from pencil holders, typewriters, and telephones, and he will be able to battle it out with the Iron Man Hulkbuster. This is Buster Stan Lee, Hulkbuster Stan Lee. Can't wait to see it.
That was hilarious.
And of course, there's all the smattering of the comedy and the pranking, with the insertion of chickens and pigs and steaks and pork chops going on. So really, again, it will be a good, fun game, which can't wait for, and is out early next year, January 2016.
Right. That's right, and features all the voice cast. It's very similar to the way they did the Hobbit game, where they took the actual cast recording and put it over the top of their brand of comedy and their brand of humor. So that's really interesting. But hearing again that Hayley Atwell recorded additional voice work for her role, kind of like the way that Phil Coulson himself did for the first Lego Marvel Avengers game, or Lego Marvel game, excuse me. He did all the additional recording for that. So this time we get Haley Atwell to do it for this game. So really interesting. They showed, as I said, a kind of a flashback clip of Peggy Carter in a kind of sepia coloured diner directly out of the TV show. You could definitely tell that it's being taken from that. I thought it was great fun. Really excited to see it. And one of the other things that came out from the panel from TT Games is their absolute dedication to making sure this is as authentic as possible. They talked about the room where they build every single item that's in the game is built by people who build Legos all day, and that's the best job in the world. That's what they do. If it can't be built in Lego, it can't go into the game, is essentially where their method of doing it. So that was great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on to the big thing for us, which was definitely the Netflix Marvel panel in the main stage that looked at Jessica Jones and Daredevil. And one thing that will be remiss of us to say, we are Defenders TV podcast, and we got to see the Defenders as they are so far construed. That is Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, played by Charlie Cox, Kristen Ritter, and Mike Coulter. It was great fun. The reaction from the hall was huge.
What a moment.
Yeah, Jeff Loeb said he was going to get into trouble for doing this. He ran off stage and pulled out the 3 Defenders that are known about already, and it was great. And we were so happy to see this. I mean,
very cool.
The roof just exploded in this hall as they came out, and then were quickly shuffled off back out as Jeff Loeb kind of apologized to his colleagues in Netflix to say, you know, that's fine, but now we're going to make up for it. And we went straight into some sizzle reels of Daredevil, and not only a sizzle reel from Daredevil, not only a panel with the cast there, but also then the Jessica Jones panel with a full airing of the first episode of Jessica Jones that will be released with the other 12 in November. Literally, what are we talking about? 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away. So we can't wait for this. And whilst we can't say too much about the episodes in details, we will give you a little summary of what we felt. You know, we fainted, we whooped, we clapped, we shouted. It was brilliant.
Well, we just hop into that now. Let's talk about it now, because we're clearly chomping at the bit to talk about it.
Yes,
I think we've mentioned it about 6 times so far in the podcast, but yes, really big moment, really big surprise for the audience. Jeff Loeb does this thing at New York Comic Con. He did it this year and last year, where he essentially pretends that he's forgotten to bring a clip along of the show and gets encouraged by one of the members of cast to show a bigger clip. He did it last year with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He did it on Friday with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel again, and this time he did it with Kristen Ritter, and she essentially said, well, why don't you show the guys the first episode? So we got to see the first episode. So a couple of things to jumped out at me, I suppose, to talk about. Number one is the opening titles, which I thought were really cool, really noir, not as intense, I suppose, or not as immediately music-wise as attractive as the Daredevil soundtrack or the Daredevil theme tune. It builds up quite a lot throughout the theme tune and gets much more noirish and much more kind of 70s cool by the end of the theme. So that was one thing that jumped
out to me. And grander as well. It builds up from very small, humble beginnings and becomes bigger and more expansive as a piece of music. And it goes really well with the look of the opening credits, which again are very different from Daredevil. Yeah. So, I was pretty taken by them, but I mean, as an overall thought for me, and here's a load of adjectives. You know, this is neon and noir. Like, I love the private investigation feel and all the neon lighting. It really adds huge atmosphere to the episode. And I mean, this is, again, like Daredevil brought the violence. This is super sexy and sassy. This is bringing physical relationships, certainly from the first episode, much more to the front, but it is also really creepy, really intense, and is challenging. All I can say is that David Tennant couldn't be there, but he popped a video because he's doing a play in London at the moment to say hi, and he thanked everyone, and he kind of introduced the first episode. And I have to say that what he brings to that first episode with the minuscule amount of screen time that he is given is, quite frankly, astonishingly amazing. And I think that's all I can really say, is that he hardly is there, very briefly, but what he brings to the tenseness and the creepiness of that first episode is, quite frankly, like, awesome. It's brilliant. And it's like, hats off to David Tennant, hats off to director and the other cast and crew who, like, make it feel like that. Definitely. I thought that was amazing for me.
Yeah. Melissa Rosenberg was at the panel, who's the showrunner for this show. I can really see what she's going for with it. And again, one huge thing I would say, unfortunately, some idiot recorded some of this footage from the episode 1, popped it up on YouTube. I believe it's been taken down now. Hopefully it has been. Don't watch it. I didn't watch it myself, but there's no possible way that watching a 20-minute version, edited from a phone on YouTube would give you any kind of feeling of how the show actually looks in its entirety. Avoid spoilers if you can. Possibly for the episode. I was pretty shocked that they actually showed a full episode at New York Comic Con. I'm surprised how few spoilers have actually come out, and I don't want to be the one to spoil it for anybody. Watch it in all its glory on November 20th. We'll be there right with you, and we'll have our podcast up that day of our actual review of it and our actual thoughts of the episode. So really looking forward to actually talking about it in depth, especially with Irene and Chris, who obviously couldn't come with us to New York to see it at Comic Con. But yeah, we won't be spoiling it for them, and we don't want to spoil it for anybody else, because there's some really interesting stuff, and it's a very different show to Daredevil already. One thing that I would say is similar about it is it does feel like a pilot, this first episode. It does feel like they really are introducing you to a lot of characters throughout it. But remember, it's all coming out in the same day on Netflix, which the best part about it means, unlike us, you can just watch the second episode immediately afterwards. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing we want to convey is just how excellent it was, and how kind of jaw-droppingly great and also different from Daredevil.
Yeah.
So it's not a copy, and it's not the same. It's a different showrunner. It's a different take. So it's an amazing introduction to a Marvel superhero that most people won't know about. And in fact, I would say, hands up, in all honesty, I didn't know too much about until I knew about Marvel Netflix Daredevil, and I went out to read some of the Alias comics. Mm-hmm. So if you want to know more about Jessica Jones, in the few weeks that remain till it airs on Netflix, go and search your local comic shop for Alias or for some of the other Jessica Jones story arcs.
Yeah, definitely.
And you'll be surprised. You will really latch on to this lady.
Yeah. This definitely feels like it is taken from Alias. The comment that was made by Jeff Loeb was that he was talking to Brian Michael Bendis, who really did create the character of Jessica Jones and really gave her all of her characteristics. He was talking to him after showing him this pilot episode, and he gave his absolute stamp of approval and said that this show is going exactly where he wanted it to go all those years ago, 15 years or so ago, when he was originally thinking of the concept of bringing this to TV. They've taken it really well, and it's well worth watching. We'll be talking all about that in about a month's time. But a couple of other things from the Daredevil panel. We got to meet Elektra Natchios for the first time.
Absolutely.
That was really good fun. She's an actress that I haven't actually seen in anything else prior to this, but she commented on the fact that really the reason that she got the role was because she's a black belt in karate and could kick Jeff Loeb's ass.
She knows her stuff, and she looked awesome in the quick sizzle reel that we got of her, which is now available up on the Netflix's YouTube site.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes for that, so you can have a look.
So you can check that out. And of course, we got to see the Punisher as well.
Frank Castle.
Frank Castle was there, and it was really good to see John Bernthal there. Again, seemed really humble for the character, and honoured to be representing Frank Castle in Daredevil Season 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether they've actually released this panel over on Marvel Entertainment's YouTube channel. If they have, check it out, because I will definitely make a comment about Jon Bernthal. We saw him at the Walking Dead fan premiere, I think, on the Friday, so the night before this Marvel panel, and he was a really kind of big character, a big, open, kind of, I don't know, arrogance, not the word I'm looking for, but with a really big kind of American guy, I suppose.
He was in Madison Square Gardens.
Absolutely.
Of course he had to be big and brash and open because he has an entire auditorium such as Madison Square Gardens to fill. It was a different version of Jon Bernthal here on the main stage.
He basically seemed to be really humble about the character, seemed to be taking a lot of pride in playing the part of Frank Castle, who, if you don't know, and a lot of people don't know the Punisher character, but he's a character that's come back from war, has suffered some severe losses, and suffers the loss of his family. Jon Bernthal's comment was he knows how important this character is to the US military, he knows how important he is to the police and armed forces in the US, and he'll respect that in his portrayal of the character, which kind of is an interesting insight to the character for me. He's not playing him like a comic book character. Anybody who's seen Walking Dead, the first 2 seasons at least of the show, will know how intense an actor Jon Bernthal is. I can really see that he wants to bring that same intensity to the character, but seems to be playing it with a bit of a different spin on it than we've seen in the movies in the past, the 3 films that were made of The Punisher. He seems to be taking it very seriously and seems to be taking, very much what a lot of actors do, which is justify the essential essence of the character in how you play it. So he doesn't sound like he's going to be just a big violent guy with guns. It sounds like he's got a lot of backstory to him that we hopefully will find out with season 2.
But he did say the word beg on the sizzle reel, which had to be shown again because everyone was shouting, clapping, cheering so much during the first run of this sizzle reel, which kind of does look at the plaudits for the season 1 and teases out these season 2 elements that no one could hear what he said. Everyone knew that he said something, but no one knew exactly what he said. And it definitely sounded like beg. Yeah. So he's still a hard ass and he's still going to kick ass, but he is as well, justifying that.
Yeah, and we did have our discussion after the panel, obviously, to see if we could all work out what was said in that. We've come up with beg, I think. I was talking to David Wang, one of our listeners, after the footage had been released, and he believes the word is pay, or pain, something like that. So we'll just have to see. It was really interesting though, exactly as Jordan says. Very much everybody thought it was a sizzle reel for season 1. Everybody thought it was a big promotional piece for season 1. So nobody was expecting when it faded to black at the end of watch on Netflix, essentially, that we were going to get season 2. So the applause from the audience drowned out almost everything in the second part, which was the season 2 trailer.
You get to see Elektra put on her mask, and of course there's a great image of an X-ray of the Punisher's face, and you get that classic sort of skull look. Really a nice twist on the representation of the Punisher's image. Really, really cool. And of course, Charlie Cox is returning. Deborah Ann Woll is returning. So is Night Nurse as well, played by Rosario Dawson. Foggy's returning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Stick's returning. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they bring him back in season 2. There was a really good interview with Marco Ramirez, who is the new showrunner for season 2. One of the 2 new showrunners actually for season 2. He was really interesting to hear his thoughts on it. Essentially, he was saying that he worked very closely with Stephen DeKnight, who was the showrunner for season 1, and Drew Goddard, when they were setting up the show, and very much they were coming at Marvel from a completely different way of looking at it. Didn't realize there was an audience for a show of this adult in nature. Didn't realize they were going to have the kind of plaudits that they got for season 1 and the viewers that they got for season 1. They definitely announced that this is one of the biggest shows Netflix has ever had. Nobody knows what that means in actual number terms. But by having all of that and all the great responses they got from the audience, what they've essentially said is now they know. Now they know how far they can push it, and look out, season 2 is going to be a big one. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, really good. And he basically also said, this is developing, this is the existing characters setting up new ones, and now that they've got the world created by Stephen DeKnight and Drew Goddard, that they can push those envelopes and play in it further. So it'll be absolutely excellent to see if the quality remains the same. This will be an awesome season 2.
Definitely. I think that's it for the Daredevil and Jessica Jones panel. Just suffice to say, obviously, the full cast were at the Jessica Jones panel. It was really cool to see Mike Coulter, who's playing Luke Cage, sit on the panel and have a chat with everybody around him. He's already confirmed that he started filming Luke Cage, which I thought was very interesting. He says he only appears in a portion of Jessica Jones, the series. We did see a little bit of him in episode 1. So that was quite cool.
Carrie-Anne Moss was also there on the panel, who will be a great new addition to the cast and will again further push the boundaries and the envelope of what to expect from a Marvel Netflix collaboration. Really, really good.
Yeah, and again, interesting hearing her speak of it. Very much talking about Jessica Jones in terms of a new kick-ass female character. She was very lucky, she said, to play the part of a really kick-ass female character back in her days in The Matrix, which we all remember her from. And she's looking at this new version of a kick-ass female character, she says, in Christian Ritter, and really saying that she's taken the mantle from those older characters, if you can say older, and taking it forward. And I definitely would agree with her on that. It was really cool.
It was a really, really good panel. I think, with that, I think that's our Marvel section from New York Comic Con 2015. If you want to find and listen to our Jessica Jones coverage, which will be kicking off on its release in November by Netflix, remember, just go to us at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or you can listen to us on the website at www.defenderstvpodcast.com. You can also listen to us on any other good podcast catcher, such as Beyond Pod, Player FM, Podcast Addict, or Stitcher. Just search Defenders TV Podcast. We are on Twitter at DefendersCast, and you can join our Facebook page and group. Again, just search Defenders TV Podcast.
And while you're checking out those episodes on iTunes, while you're waiting for Jessica Jones, make sure you check out our episodes all about Daredevil. We did do the entire first season of Daredevil. We covered Agent Carter on our episode. So if this is your first time listening to us, make sure you go back and listen to our old episodes so you get an idea of the format and how we cover our shows coming up to Jessica Jones.
So if you want to hear all our coverage of New York Comic Con, including Gotham, including The Walking Dead, along with Defenders, you can also catch that at tvpodcastindustries.com/iTunes. Or again, you can hear it on the website at www.tvpodcastindustries.com. I think one final thing for me is that we also got to meet Robin from Defenders Podcast, which was great. Really good chap. Really nice to meet him. Glad he made it safely back to Vermont after his 4 days at New York Comic Con, along with ourselves. And hopefully we'll get to meet other members of that Marvel Netflix podcast too.
Yeah, and while we were there, we also got to meet the owner of the Twitter handle Daredevil Room.
Absolutely.
Not sure whether she wants us to share her name, so I'm not going to, but really a pleasure to meet up with some fellow Daredevil fans, and the excitement after the Jessica Jones reveal and the footage for season 2 of Daredevil was palpable between the four of us nerding out at New York Comic Con, which is the best thing to do when you're at a Comic Con anyway. Definitely.
Exactly. Yes. We put all the caffeine huggers at Starbucks to shame. We looked more caffeined out than they did because we were truly excited.
Obviously, make sure you enter our competition to win those wonderful prizes. The original artwork of Jessica Jones for Netflix, the artwork of Daredevil for Netflix, which we picked up at New York Comic Con. I'm sure you've seen those images around. We also got the poster for Agent Carter Season 2, for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, and that tie-in comic which ties together the world of Daredevil on Netflix and Jessica Jones on Netflix, as John mentioned earlier on, written by Brian Michael Bendis and by Michael Gaydos. All you have to do is just send in a review to us on iTunes, defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or review us on any other good podcast catcher, and send us in your feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com.
So thank you so much for listening. We will be back for the Marvel Netflix Jessica Jones podcast coverage from ourselves at Defenders TV Podcast with also Chris and Irene.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.